Hi, thank you for joining us today. I'm Allison Kane, and I'm one of the principal navigators at Career Launch Navigators. For those of you who are not familiar with our organization, we focus on equipping our clients who are upperclassmen and recent university graduates with the tools, the techniques, and the strategies to successfully launch their career. Today, our topic is the power and importance of building your personal brand. And soon I'll introduce my colleague, Lita Citron, who has particular expertise in this area. But first, I want to set the stage and share with you some important statistics. Studies show that 52% of recent college graduates, a year after graduating, are in a role that would be considered an underemployed position. What that means is that they are in a job that does not require a 4 year degree or relevant experience. What's more alarming is that 10 years later, 73% of people who start in an underemployed role are still in an underemployed employment situation. This really highlights how important that first job is. It really creates the launch pad for your career trajectory and sets the stage for the future. Now, certainly, we all know that it's a challenging job market today. And I can tell you that very often recent graduates struggle with building what their personal brand is. They can be excellent students with high GPAs, and even coming from marquee universities, it's still a challenge for these recent graduates. They struggle in telling their story. They don't have a go to market plan. And what that means is that you don't stand out. Having a personal brand really allows you to highlight what are your strengths, what are your passions, and it's really quite a risk if you don't tap in to building that personal story, that go to market strategy, the personal brand. So it's my pleasure to introduce you today to my colleague and friend, Lita Citron. Now, Lita is an internationally recognized personal branding expert. She's a seven-time author, including a book that is particularly relevant for today's discussion. And that is her book, Reputation 360, Jumpstart Your Career by Building a Positive Personal Brand. And so, Lita, I'll hand it over to you now.
Thanks so much, Allison, and welcome to everyone who is listening. I am also a principal navigator at Career Launch Navigators, as well as being the CEO of Lita 360, a personal branding and reputation management firm. And I have the honor of working with clients in over 30 countries, traditionally at the senior or executive level, and being able to participate in career launch navigators and actively work with these students is really an opportunity to bring all those best practices that we see senior professionals deploying in the marketplace to a younger generation who may or may not have been exposed to a lot of these same topics. I'm really excited to be talking about personal branding because it's my work. And first, let's start by understanding really what a personal brand is. We live in a world of perception, right? People judge, they form opinions, they have perceptions. Right or wrong, that's human nature. And a personal brand is how you communicate your value, your interests, your offer to the people who are relevant and compelling to your career. So, in a sense, it's how you manage the way you're perceived. It's very experiential, right? So, how do I feel when I interact with you? And you build your personal brand by how you act, how you behave, how you communicate and speak, and the relationships that you've formed. That's sort of that you're known by the company you keep. Personal brand is definitely impacted by that. It matters today, probably more than ever before, because we're in a very fast paced, competitive world, No matter what industry, what type of organization or company somebody is looking to gain entry or build a career within, there's a lot of competition. It might be the person next to you, it might be another job applicant, it might be another graduating student from an equally impressive school with an equally impressive resume. So competition's gotten fierce. And that interviewer, that employer, that hiring professional is evaluating you not just as a job candidate, but as someone to fit into the organization. I often teach that companies hire for culture and fit as much as they do for skills and experience. Are you one of us? Does your personality gel with the rest of the team or the group? Because it's very hard to insert someone who comes from the outside into a really well organized team. So they're looking for personality, they're looking for style, they're looking for a sense of who you are and what you care about. And all of that comes through in your personal brand. If you're not in charge of your brand, if you're not actively managing that perception, you're leaving a lot to chance. And there's a quote I'm very well known for that says, everyone has a personal brand by design or by default. Every person listening to this program has a reputation. People think certain things of you, they feel certain things about you. And that's based on the way you've acted, the way you've spoken, and the relationships you've been known for. So we've all got a personal brand. What we're really passionate about at Career Launch Navigators is helping young students, graduates, understand how to manage that from the start so that they can actively drive the perception that they want going forward. So let's talk a little bit about how do you build a brand? What are some of the things that we work with your students on? First, I take them through a values exercise. And for some of them, they have never thought about this before. But every person has a set of values. And if you're a parent and you're listening to this because you have a student that might need some personal branding help, then their values are probably pretty closely linked to the values you taught them. Our values often get intertwined with our culture, our community, our friends, sometimes social media influencers, our parents, religious convictions. All of that influences how we see the world and what we use to make decisions. So the way I describe values are they're the moral operating system or the moral code by which you live by. What do you deem as right? What is wrong? What is yes? What is heck no? Those are where your values live. And for sometimes for young people, they've never thought about it in this way, but that's the foundation of who they are as a person. And that's where the brand really starts. Their current brand is how they're known today. So, what we need to think about is how people currently see them. And again, they may never have thought about this, and that's okay. Most of the professionals I work with don't think about this until somebody asks them the question. But the real power in personal branding comes when we decide how we want to be known. How do we want to be received and perceived when we go into a job interview, or we start our new career, or we lead a team, or we're doing something that's important to us? How do we want people to receive us? What are the qualities based on our values that we want them to see and know? It's so important to have that idea of ideal end state, right? What is the goal? What are we working towards? Because then when we later look at how we market our brand, and I'll get to that in a second, then everything filters through that. So let's say, for example, I want to be seen as collaborative and honest. I want people to know that I'm a team player. I love to work alongside people and learn and teach, and honesty is really fundamental to my value set. Then I'm going to show up that way in every communication. I'm going to highlight the places I've been a team player and the collaboration opportunities I've had in my college or university career. I'm going to pull those values and attributes forward to make sure that they are always known by the audience who might be looking for someone like me with my skills and my experience coming from a school like I come from, who has a value and a commitment to collaboration and who really values honesty. So having an idea of where you're headed is really important. And so we walk students through the experience of really ideating, right? They may not know the right terms or what typical job descriptions match up with that, and that's okay. We're trying to get them to get a sense of how do you want to be perceived and how do you want to be received. The last part of building your brand is actually understanding your who. Who's your target audience? And one thing I have found really helpful is it's hard to tell someone who may have very limited internship or job experience, what types of companies or what types of jobs would you imagine you'd thrive in? Because their perspective is different. But what I might say is, let's talk about the things you wouldn't like. And I'll ask them questions like, do you want to work outdoors? Are you more comfortable working in an office? Do you like to work in a team? Are you more comfortable working independently? Getting them to start to think about what they don't want sometimes helps us get to the place of what they do want. But it's important to understand who their audience is, because if they're doing the shotgun approach, right, and sending their resume to every job opening online, that's not a strategy. That's actually a big waste of time, and you could depreciate your credibility. So we try to get them focused and to understand that they have more control over this than they might originally think. The marketing part of personal branding is what most people think personal branding is, right? And it includes things like your story, as Allison mentioned in the intro, right? How do you talk about yourself? What is the narrative that you use to tell the story of where you started and where you are and where you want to be? It includes things like your network. And a lot of the students that we're working with are really not very well versed on the concept of strategic and intentional networking. And granted, at their level, it looks a little different than if you're a mid or a senior level career professional, but it's still important to think about. So we need to have them understand the value of networking and building relationships and being strategic about it. There's the online piece, which they often feel like they have a really good sense of, but they haven't been strategic about how they're positioning themselves. So they might post things online that once we do the personal branding work, they say, oh, I can't believe I shared that. I should never have said that. Or I thought nobody could see that. Right. So now they have a different filter to look at their social media. What's the content that they talk about? Are they talking about topics that are rich and on trend and important? Or are they talking about things that are silly and that a hiring manager might not think favorably about? So, content is a part of how we market ourselves. And then the presence and the image that sets an impression, right? What does their eye contact look like? How are they sitting? Are they comfortable in their own skin when they're in a stressful situation like a job interview? Those are important things. Are they dressing appropriately? And we all understand that we're interviewing a lot virtually now, and some companies are onboarding people virtually. So you might not even see your coworkers in person for a while. So your environment really matters. Are you taking meetings with a messy dorm room in the back, or are you coming to the conversation professional, polished, and representing the image and impression that you want to make? Personal branding is a little bit of work at the beginning. I will not deny that. But the benefits long term are absolutely outstanding. They are long lasting. They flex and mature and grow as your student or as you are growing and flexing and maturing. We can modify and elevate our brand, but we don't fundamentally change it over time. And Allison mentioned in the intro that I have written several books. The one that I'm really passionate about for this audience is the one called Reputation 360, Jumpstart Your Career by Building a Positive Personal Brand. And I share something that I want to read to you. It's kind of close to the beginning. When you take the time to define and build the reputation you want and create your personal brand around your authentic values and skills, your target audience can learn who you are, what you do best, and why they need you. It's so important. If we're not driving the conversation, we're giving away our power. We're leaving too much to chance. And for senior professionals, mid-level career professionals, and folks starting their career, it is so important to think about how you want to show up. The world's moving fast. We've all got competing things competing for our attention, right? Our cell phones are beeping, our messages are dinging on our computers, and everything is flashing. So it's not about being loud to stand out. It's about being thoughtful and strategic and intentional, and then showing up as a real person with real ideas, real curiosity, and real passion for what comes next. And we're so honored to be able to work with young graduates coming out of these wonderful schools who have so much at their fingertips, so much potential and so much heart, and they just need some skills around positioning themselves to have the opportunities flow in the way that they want. So I invite Allison to join me back up here on stage, and we'll wrap up with some closing thoughts. And then I do think we have some questions that we can tackle.
Thank you so much, Lita. That was fantastic. And so let's just kind of recap. What are some of the key takeaways from what Lita shared with you today? It's important to start now. Don't wait until you're in the middle of a job search. You actually do have a brand, and you need to own it. It is your strategy to own. As Lita said, if you don't own it, you're leaving things to chance. And really, quite frankly, you're introducing risk in your job search and your successful career launch. You need to also think about the way that you show up across what I would call different channels, right? It's how you talk, it's who your colleagues and friends are, it's your social media presence, it's how you're talking about yourself in LinkedIn. And it's honestly how you write too, how you write, how you talk. It's really how you show up in so many different ways. And it really can help differentiate you and allow you to not get lost in the deluge of other applicants when you apply your personal brand to your career launch strategy. It is an essential tool. And Lita, you're right. We do actually have a few questions that were submitted ahead of time. And so I would love to just chat through those if we can.
Sure.
The first one is, since I'm only a rising senior, I'm not sure I even have something significant to highlight. Would love your views on that.
That was really what started me writing the book Reputation 360, because that's a question we hear all the time, right? I hear it from people who may not feel like their career has been successful and they don't have anything they want to call attention to. But you have in school, you have probably been part of clubs. Maybe you've developed an expertise that you may not think relates to the job. I remember one of the students we worked with who had a passion for gaming, and his career path looked different, but he goes, I don't have any relevant experience. I just enjoy video games. That's what I do all day. Well, wait a minute. You want to be a software engineer, an architect. What makes you think that being a gamer isn't relevant? And he goes, really? So sometimes we just have to ask the questions, but everyone has something. Maybe you've done volunteer work, and it might be in a pet shelter, and you're trying to be run a library. What does managing or working in a pet shelter and running a library have to do with each other? Well, it's responsibility, it's accountability, it's showing up on time, it's being able to interact with other people. So that's one thing I think, we do a really good job of is uncovering those assets, which they might not think are that important, but positioned in a way that's authentic and meaningful, really does get the impression of employers. They know you don't have 10 years of job experience. You've been in
Mhm.
school. We get that. So it's all about positioning.
That's awesome. And I agree with you 100%. And I love how you call out authenticity. It
Mhm.
is so important to be the real you. What you don't want to have happen is to create this false facade of a brand. And then when you show up at the job, you can't keep that up. And then it's like a different person shows up. So authenticity is essential, an essential part of your personal brand, in my opinion.
I agree.
Okay, the next question is, how important is social media to personal branding and job hunting?
Oh, let me take this one first. And I know you have opinions too. I would say if you asked me that question 10 years ago, there was some negotiation, right? Because not everybody's comfortable sharing on social media, being visible, being found. But as a job seeker in this year, 2025, it is everything. Because here's what happens when you have a LinkedIn profile, for example. On LinkedIn, you're adding your experience and it might be limited, but you're talking about what you've done. You're adding an about section. So you're telling people more about you than they would ever find on a resume. You're showing them what you look like and that you're a happy, normal, happy person, right? And you've got a background image that kind of is a second read. So there's all these assets. You can add recommendations. You can talk about publications. Maybe you were featured in the school newspaper. There's so much content. And what you're doing by doing that is not only making it easier for people that you're connected to share your information, but let's say I'm a hiring manager and I get your resume. First thing I'm going to do is go to LinkedIn. And they tell me this every day. They go to LinkedIn to look for 2 things. I wanna see more about you than what you say on your resume, and I wanna see that it's consistent. So if you tell me you're passionate about gaming, then I can see that on LinkedIn. You might list it as a hobby. But if there's a disconnect, if you tell me you don't like gaming on LinkedIn, but on your resume you tell me you do, like there's inconsistency. So it's a chance to be found and found in the way that is controllable. You put what you put on your LinkedIn profile. Nobody's going in there in the middle of the night putting something that you don't approve. So you're controlling the way you're showing up. And it allows you to connect with other people and be found by other people. Now, there are so many other social media platforms, and I'm learning about new ones every time I have one of these calls, right? Because I sometimes feel like I know the big six, but now there's 12. Um, they're all public. And we have to go into social media with the idea that anything we post online, whether it's a comment to a Reddit post or a post on Facebook or whatever, they're all public. And I don't care if you have privacy settings turned on, there's no such thing. Everything can be made public. So we got to go in with that sense of it. We're putting it out there to be known by. So if we're taking a strategic approach to social media, then we're curating the impression that we want people to have. And I know, Allison, you and I've both had clients that we've worked with who really hadn't thought about it. And so there were things online that they said, yeah, that probably wouldn't look really good if an employer saw that. And my advice is always just take it down.
Mhm.
Take it down because the odds that they're going to do a forensic deep dive into your that's not going to happen. But if you leave it up there and I can see it, then you're assuming it's okay for me to see. And if it creates a negative impression, now you've got to live with that. So it's very important to job hunting and it's very important to personal branding. And if you're involved in one social media platform, I would say for these purposes, LinkedIn is the one. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, LinkedIn is really your online professional website, and you should really use that to your advantage, right?
Mhm.
Like you said, to tell your story and to help those in your network, as well as prospective employers, to understand a little bit more about who you are, what fills your cup, what makes you tick, what you're proud of, what you follow, what you engage in. LinkedIn is an amazing tool, and you need to use it to your advantage.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
scary for some people because it feels very professional, but you don't have to jump in the deep end. We walk you through how to get started, how to build a page, how to curate content, how to comment. This can start slowly, but it is an opportunity to make it easier for that hiring manager or recruiter or the person who wants to refer you. It's easier for them to learn more about you. So if you're not going to be on LinkedIn, you have to have a really good reason for why not. And the reason isn't, I don't understand it or I think it's silly, because you're basically saying you're making my job harder. So because you don't want to learn about it, you know what I mean? It doesn't work that way. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
cool.
All righty. Here's a good one. What do you do if your personal brand is not great? And Lita, I know that you specialize in helping people with fixing brand issues. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a whole nother book that I wrote called Control the Narrative. Reputation repair. It is serious, right? We live in a cancel culture world now, and young professionals are probably buffered a little bit than someone who might be later in their career where there's a little more visibility, there's a little more responsibility, and a lot more at stake. But the way to think about if your brand isn't ideal is the time to change it or work on modifying it is now. Don't wait till you have a job or don't wait till you're in an active job search to start refining how you're coming across. If the perception people have of you is not positive and maybe it's even negative, you have the ability to change how you behave, how you communicate, and the relationships you have. We've got to hope at that point that people will give you the benefit of the doubt and want to learn more. But we can't control other people. If you've ever been married, you try, but you're not allowed to. Anyway, we really can't control them. But think about that example that I shared of the images. So if you've got offensive images on your Facebook or Instagram account, and I can get to them because there are ways to get around privacy settings. If I can get to them, then I'm believing that that's how you want me to see you and judge you and perceive you. So taking them down is a positive step towards making it better. If you hear from people, or let's say you got feedback from an interview that said, you came across a little arrogant. And for someone starting their career, that was surprising for us. Then look at what that behavior may have been, right? Maybe you were nervous. And so the nervousness or the anxiousness caused you to speak in one word responses and not make eye contact. Okay, there's a learning that can happen there, and you can work on that with a counselor, with a coach, or with an advisor to be able to make that different next time. All we can do is go forward. And starting right now, if you've gotten feedback that your reputation or brand is less than ideal, you have the ability to change that. The world isn't going to change it for you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Lita. I
Sure.
appreciate that. All right. I think that's probably all
Yep.
we have time for today. Thank you again for joining us, and I really hope that what we shared with you today gives you the incentive to invest in building and nurturing your personal brand, because it is absolutely an essential tool for those who are on their career launch journeys. And if you have any additional questions for Lita or myself, or would like to know more about Career Launch Navigators, please reach out to us at our website, which is on the screen. It's careerlaunchnavigators.com. And thanks again for joining us today. Have a good one.
Bye.